Welcome, my wonderful students of Victimology. That was weird. It's just, I'm sitting here in my office at home, and there's no one in my house, and I'm supposed to be talking to a class full of students, and it's just weird. And so I don't know, man. It's weird. I'm just sitting here talking to myself. But I'm talking to you. But not at this time. But at the time that you're listening to it, I am talking to you. But at that point, I'm probably doing the dishes. Okay, anyway, so we're going to talk about just sort of some introductory concepts in victimology before we get into the thick of it. So topic one is all just about crime, victimology, where do we get all this stuff, right? Now, I am not going to cover every single slide in this video. I'm going to go over the important stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be watching a 2-hour long video, which is not my vibe at the moment. And also, given that this is for an online class or for a high flex or a hybrid class, I do want to implore you to also do some of the reading, okay? So, what is victimology? Okay, so victimology came from, I said that really weird. Victimology. You know when you say a word over and over so many times that it just sounds weird after a while? Victimology. Okay, so victimology is a subset or a sub-discipline within criminology. Now, there are some people who are starting to say, no, victimology is its own thing, but you cannot deny the fact that victimology came out of criminology. And just like you can't deny the fact that criminology came out of sociology and psychology. So, but anyways, so criminology is focused on why do people even commit crime, right? That's what criminology is all about. Why do people commit crime? And at SUNY Oswego, when you take theories of crime and victimization, CRJ 333, you'll be learning about criminology. But either way, criminology set out to say, okay, look, we're going to apply the scientific method to understanding why crime occurs. And as such, we have these three basic theoretical paradigms: the classical, the positivistic, and the behavior of law view. Okay? The classical view essentially assumes that people are rational, people are selfish, and they're constantly engaged in the hedonistic calculus, meaning people are always weighing the costs and benefits of any behaviors that they engage in, and whatever seems to be the most beneficial to them, that is the behavior they will engage in, okay? So deterrence theory, routine activities theory, those theories will come from the classical view. Positivistic view says, no, people are born neutral, people's behavior is determined by by other things, whether it's genetics, whether it's psychological issues, whether it is sociological issues, whatever. Also, the positivistic view was really the first grouping of theories that applied the scientific method to criminological thought. Like deterrence theory in its original form was just like a philosophy almost. It was just made up and it was never tested. But when the positivistic theories came about, their main thing was that they applied the scientific method to things. But we often use the positivistic name to refer to deterministic theories. And then a third group of theories is the behavior of law theories. And these are theories that sort of look at, they come from the perspective of crime only exists because rules exist. And so they look at who then gets to make the rules? Who gets to define what is crime, right? Like seriously, think about that for a second. Like we just assume, that what's wrong is wrong, but who gets to say what's wrong? You know what I mean? Like, who told you what's wrong? And then who told them what's wrong? So that's actually a really cool perspective. It's a little more based in postmodern thinking, but sometimes it's kind of good to ask yourself, but wait, why is this wrong in the first place? Like, who got to say that this was wrong, right? Oh, a bunch of men are making laws about women's bodies. Huh, that's interesting. I wonder who gave them the right, right? Or you realize, right, that rich people are the ones making laws, but most people are poor, right? And so rich people keep on making laws that help them with their pursuits, right? That's why, we're never going to get a flat tax rate because rich-ass people are making laws, right? But our tax law is so damn confusing, right? So that rich-ass people can take advantage of it. Because who are the people making laws about taxes? Rich-ass people, all right? So the behavior of law perspective goes about that way. And it is quite interesting, especially when we're considering, the laws that are made about women, the laws that are made about, for instance, like, why is it that we consider white-collar crimes to not be as serious as street crimes, right? In fact, white-collar crimes hurt so many more people. But it's because the people who are committing white-collar crimes are different to those people who are committing street crimes, right? So anyways. So those are like the three ways of looking at why people commit crime, and that is what criminology is. Now, victimology came out of criminology and started focusing solely on the victim, right? Why are some people getting victimized over others, right? And now one thing that we can't get twisted up in here, okay, is victimology sometimes gets a bad rap because people are like, you're just victim blaming. No, you're not victim blaming, but you are scientifically looking at the factors that are associated with people who are victimized versus people who are not victimized. What factors are leading to victimization over others, right? It's not there to blame people. It's there to figure out what can we do. It's like looking at crime from a different angle. And obviously, criminology looks at all forms of deviance and law breaking, whereas victimology only looks at deviance and law breaking that has a victim, right? So we're not going to be talking about smoking weed or crack or whatever, even though you can make an argument that there are victims. But anyways, crimes that are defined as having victims, right? That's what victimology focuses on. And then over time, victimology moved beyond sort of like the legal stuff, and now it looks at any sort of victim in any sort of situation, right? Russia that's attacking Ukraine right now, those people are victims, right? When you're in an abusive relationship, you are a victim, right? There are people who are victims of mass racism or systematic bias or systematic racism, of patriarchy, right? So that's why it's important to consider what is a victim. Well, the concept of a victim came from, back in the day, right around the agricultural revolution. We started seeing the word victima in different types of scriptures and texts and stuff. And it essentially initially involved people who were, it was sort of connected to the concept of sacrifice, right? If you were sacrificed for some sort of religious ritual, or if you sacrificed, yourself or something, you are a victim of that sacrifice. But over time, that term has become more inclusive, and now it implies a wide range of unfortunate situations where people are put at a disadvantage because of something, right? It typically involves one party wronging another party, and that wronging being either deviant or criminal, okay? And so this can now involve interpersonal violence, war, accidents, right? financial scams, identity theft, any of this stuff. All right? And we even get victims of our criminal justice system, right? Like all those people who are sitting in prison, who are wrongfully convicted, or people who weren't afforded due process, or whatever. Okay? So victim pretty much involves anyone that's been wronged by some other party as a consequence of some sort of not doing things the right way. So the first person to kind of look at a victim in a scientific or like a systematic way was Mendelsohn. And so he said that victimhood featured four fundamental criteria, right? So you are a victim, right? If the nature of whatever was involved in an event caused some form of suffering, whether it's psychological, physical, or both, or social, or whatever, right? You're also a victim if whatever happened to you, right? If you or other people feel like suffering has occurred, right? So that is, do you recognize that you have just endured suffering? He also said that with victimhood comes a social factor. And what we mean by that is that the way that society views what you went through or reacts to it can sometimes have a greater impact than the actual victimization, right? Sometimes society will react with blaming, other times with compassion, other times with rage, other times with indifference, and that can also play a role in the type of victimhood or in what characterizes your victimhood. And lastly, there has to be some sort of inferiority complex. These are usually feelings of submission that then turn into you being angry with a other party which you deem as culpable. Okay, there's some sort of resentment towards another culpable party. So eventually, what that means is that the victim usually feels like there's someone or something that's caused this. Sometimes they know who it is. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's an entity. Other times it's a specific person. Other times it's an unknown entity. But they feel like they've received the short end of the stick within a certain context, right? And so Mendelsohn's work has been used to create different types of, to conceptualize different types of victims, right? So based on the nature of the suffering, right, the social character, the importance of the social factor, and the origin of the inferiority complex, this sort of shapes the type of victim that you're categorized as. And this is something that we'll cover later on in the semester. But in today's world, when we define a victim, we would say a victim of a crime, especially a violent crime, can be defined as someone who has been attacked or confronted or violated by someone who is perceived as a predator that's resulted in some form of physical or mental injury, right? And at this point in time, there's no profile of what a crime victim is, right? We notice that there is no one type of victim, right? Anyone can be a victim, and as we go through the semester, we're going to learn some factors that increase the likelihood of victimization in different contexts, right? For instance, to give you an example, the chance of you being a victim of a cybercrime is very, very small if you're never on the internet, right? So let's consider some popular types of crimes that typically result in some form of victimization, right? Now, this is obviously not a not a complete list, not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the more popular types of things types of behaviors that are illegal in the United States that end up in that also have a victim. So burglary, right? That's when you enter someone's house unlawfully, right? Or you at least try to do it. And so you try to steal something or break something or whatever, and that is a property crime, but it usually involves someone else's property. Larceny is when you steal something from someone. And then a personal crime is some sort of crime that impacts a specific person, right? This can include sexual assault. It can include robbery, right? It can include some sort of physical attack on someone, right? Then also personal larceny is when you're like doing pickpocketing and purse snatching. A property crime is when you damage or take someone else's stuff in a means that is not legal. Robbery is when you take something from someone but you use violent force to do so, right? So when you pickpocket from someone, that's a property crime or personal larceny. But if you hold a gun up to someone's face and then take their stuff, that's robbery, right? And then violent crimes. These can include anything that violates someone's personal space or creates some sort of harm or threat of harm to them. So how do we know what the stats are on victimization? Well, there are many types of databases that we use. And there's sort of two types of databases that we use to count crime. So we have those that are based in the criminal justice system, right? Where we look at like the Uniform Crime Report. We look at NIBRS. There's prisoner statistics and court surveys, right? And then there's also the Radford database. The Radford database is a database that focuses on serial killers, right? So they collect newspaper articles and other court records based on people who've killed more than 2 people, okay? But then you can also, and so these are predominantly forms of measurement that or databases that focus really on the measurement of crime. And so if we can look at the measurement of crime, we can typically make some inferences about, victimhood. But there are also some national victimization surveys, right? So these are surveys that are sent out to people on a regular basis that tries to find out how much victimization people experience. The importance of these victimization surveys is that they help us figure out things that go beyond what the police know about, right? Or what society knows about, right? And we've actually found through victimization surveys that the police only know about a third of crime, right? So you can go into the textbook and you can read up on these a little bit more. There's other videos that I've posted here that talks more about the NCVS and the UCR, NIBRS, and all that stuff. So it's up to you. I have another video that talks about the Radford database. So those are all things that you can look up on your own. But that's where we get all the numbers that we have on victimization. It's not just like that someone just makes this stuff up, right? And so this is what crime looks like currently or victimization looks like currently in the U.S., right? We are experiencing a reduction in victimizations for both property and violent crimes. And even if you look at so the BJS statistic there, that involves the National Crime Victimization Survey data. So even if you look at victimization surveys versus the UCR, which is the FBI, versus actual police data, all of them will say that that we are experiencing less victimization in the U.S. It's been happening since the 90s. So you might ask yourself, why? Why is crime, or why are we seeing reductions in crime? Why are we seeing reductions in victimization? Well, we think it has to do with technology, right? Because up until the 90s, we saw this increase in crime. And usually what happens with crime, and you can see this sort of over time, you can see this again with the increase of cyber crimes lately, is that when a new technology diffuses across a social system, meaning, like, for instance, in the 1960s and 70s, right? Everyone had a car for like the first time ever, right? Pretty much everyone had a television, so information was moving faster. But also, our highways in the United States, these like, 2-lane highways that we have, like these big old highways, like Highway 81, 95, whatever, right? The Highway 90. These didn't really exist, or they weren't quite as popular or quite as prevalent until like the 1960s and 70s, right? So we opened up this new means of transportation to get from one place to another really quickly, right? So that was a massive technological advance. People could get away from crime scenes a lot faster. Moreover, our middle class had been growing since the end of World War II, meaning more people could get their hands on guns. But the main contribution to all of this was that the police was very far behind when it came to technology. Like, the police in the 1960s and 70s was still filling out their police reports with pen and paper, right? And so if someone committed a crime in New York City and then went out to went to Philadelphia and committed a crime there was no way that the evidence of those two crimes would be able to be compared to each other unless there was one detective who had a particular hunch to go look in Philadelphia, right? And that's the thing. There was a lot less communication between the law enforcement agencies, right? And so, and there were no national databases at that point that were widely accessible or widely or heavily populated, right? And so, as police technology started to catch up, as they started digitizing records, as they started making things more available through the internet, as they started using technology such as radar, using the video cameras, right? As all these technologies started to increase, the police started leveraging it, and as such, the chances of detection had increased over time, and so the police had been able to clear more cold cases and catch crimes as they're happening in real time, which seems to have had some sort of deterrent or incapacitation impact on the overall trends in crime, right? And we're seeing the same thing happening as law enforcement is catching up with cybercrime and cyber technology. So are the victimizations that occur on that platform are also reducing. So there's always this interplay between criminals, victims, technology, and the police, right? When criminals leverage it, usually what happens is criminals will leverage the technology and the police will take a second to catch up, and then they'll get there, right? And so we'll see this trend, we've been seeing this trend occurring for a very long time across time and space, and this will likely continue. Alrighty, so with that being said, that's topic one. Again, I did not cover everything in the slides. You can find the full slides on Blackboard, and you can get everything else in the textbook and some of the supplemental videos I posted on Blackboard. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, feel welcome to send me an email. But until the next video, remember, chill vibes.